we
recording?
Are we good?
Mm-hmm. We have Carla Watkins hanging out in the background.
In the studio.
In the studio.
Welcome,
she's taking a nap.
everyone.
Hello. Oh, welcome back to
Hashtag us too.
And this is Jay Elliott.
And that's Espi Riverton.
Yeah. And yes.
This is our podcast.
This is the pod.
It's been a week.
It's been a long week.
What have you been up to?
Crying? No. No, well, okay, so I have been listening to a lot of motivational podcasts every day and different, like Jordan Peterson or Eric Thomas. So that's been helpful, but I've just been trying to really lock down a very positive routine, which is helping. But it has been a long week, in my personal life. So that's been stressful, but yeah, I think I do feel better with the routine. Like today I was crying a lot. I better be getting my period soon. I was like, I better not just be a pussy. But I went for a run, and I know I'm getting stronger because it's weird when you're heartbroken or grieving something, because I still feel sad, but I am stronger. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
So I still feel everything, but then I was running, and maybe because I'm just physically stronger, but I was something in me was no, fuck this, and I just went even faster than I had been. But it felt like a really inspiring moment, I guess, where I was okay, I'm growing, and despite everything that's going on, I'm persevering. But yeah, it's just hard. Life is never just easy.
No, it's not. There's always we've talked about this before, the balance. If something good happens, something bad happens too, or vice versa, or everything comes at a price. I don't know. So if you have a bunch of steps forward, you're gonna have steps back. And that's normal.
Yeah, but I do think there's a way to move forward. We've talked about, you can't really cheat your way through. So if you want to feel better about something, you can't drink or else it's going to have repercussions. But because I think we are moving forward, but it is a lot of circular motion almost.
Mm-hmm.
Where then you're in a cycle of grieving, and you're I'm coming out, and then it happens again, and you're did I regress? And my therapist is always no, you didn't. You're just
dude, that's exactly how I feel about singing, because I sing, and
you should do it right now.
Nope. Not gonna do it now, but I sing, and I've been singing for years, 15 years, and I've just barely gotten to the point where I think I might be pretty good. Because I didn't have a teacher, and I didn't have a lot of help, so I had to kind of learn everything on my own, and I wasn't a naturally gifted singer. I was just kind of practicing.
Are you just saying that?
Well,
She's very hard on herself.
I don't know. My mom had just a naturally good voice since she was a very young child. She just had a very clear good pitch, a good stable voice. I did not have that. I had talent, I guess, but not that level. Mm-hmm. So I've practiced hours every day to make sure that and it does feel circular, because I would, before we've talked about this years ago, I thought it felt I would call it circling the drain. Mm-hmm. If you practice one thing and you get good at that, you stop being as good at other stuff because you're focusing on that, and then it's kind of if here's the goal, you kind of overshoot it, and then you have to come back, and then you overshoot it again, and then eventually you get to the sweet spot.
It's the hero's journey. You'll always say to me, you're oh, well, at least it'll be a good story.
Yeah.
Why are things so hard? But that was in the Odyssey when Odysseus. Homer wrote it.
Yeah.
But Odysseus goes out to sea, and then they say in every part of the hero's journey, there's a part where you kind of like are. I guess he got a little cocky about like he was so close to being home, and then he wasn't paying attention and got like blown backwards, and then had to go on like another adventure for like 10 more years, and it's just like I don't know. And then I read that book about Buddhism, the Siddhartha one.
Okay.
Like I don't know if you've read that, but there's a part where
a guy who texted me today out of nowhere. His name is Siddharth.
It's a sign. No. You have to marry him. No, I'm just kidding.
Blocked him.
Oh, okay.
And then he texted me on WhatsApp. Anyway.
Oh my god. So Siddharth is the Buddha, but that's him before he's reached enlightenment.
Oh, okay.
So he's on his
That's why
travel.
everyone is named Siddharth.
Yeah.
So many people.
Because it's the Buddha. So it sounds like yours has a long journey.
What was he, a prince?
He was a prince.
Yeah.
But then what happened was he was sheltered his whole life. So then when he like walked out of the town, I'm doing a terrible job of describing this, but then he saw suffering. Like he saw like homeless people and was like, oh my god, why is there pain? So he was on this quest for enlightenment to solve why there's pain. And then he goes on his journey. He's with, I forget, there are like a couple other people, I think, and they start to despair. They're like, oh, we've been in a circle, and he's like, no, it's a spiral upwards. Like the path is a spiral up, so we are moving up. So that's what I think of anytime. Like I remembered when I relapsed, I was like frustrated, and I was reading the book at the time, and I was like, oh, this is part of my growth. A lot of people, in order to get sober, you have to relapse. Like you have to learn and fail. Like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Yeah, because if you're just like cold turkey and you never go back, the pressure
is even more
becomes
huge.
Too much.
Yeah. And that would kind of mean you're just living under a rock, to be honest. Because I've had to learn how to navigate bars and how to navigate alcohol being around. And I still have to live my life with it being around. Or like I've said, too, it's like I've dealt with eating disorders. And that was something I really had to like face, because you can stop drinking, but you can't stop eating.
Right.
So I had to like figure out what the issue was with that. Because it wasn't the food. And it was not the alcohol either. It was like my relationship with those things was tainted because I wasn't well emotionally.
Yeah, shit's hard.
Shit's hard. Shit is hard.
But we're moving up. Also, when you were just talking about like Homer's The Odyssey, the fact that he like was close to the end and then he got blown back, that makes me think like soap opera or like a daytime television show where like the hero is like the two love interests are finally gonna like get together, and then something happens and then they can't, so stay tuned for next week. Like I feel like maybe
they do adopt that in like stories now, adopt like the hero's journey. That's
and it
like
also
the
just
original
keeps
story.
people reading.
Yeah, it does, because then it keeps the intrigue. You're like, but it makes for a great story, because then you're like, no.
Yeah.
Because I remember reading it and being like, oh my god, like reading the Odyssey and being like, this is horrible, you know, like really feeling bad. And then he learns even more on the way and comes back home eventually.
And he gets even more pussy. He just gets so much pussy
Does he?
the whole time.
I don't remember.
Yeah, he was like on Calypso's island, which is just like a bunch of fuckable women.
A lot of the like nymphs or whatever.
Yeah, he's having sex literally the whole time.
Like a whore.
Cheating on his wife. Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then she's getting all these offers from all these other people because they're like, oh, your husband's been gone forever. He's
And
probably
she's
dead.
waiting.
And she's like, no, like, I'm going to be faithful to him.
I hate him. You know what was funny was I just read that book, so I read the Song of Achilles, and Odysseus is like depicted as an asshole in it. And I was like, I don't know if I like this, because I like the idea of the Odyssey and the hero, but now I'm kind of like, Odysseus is a cheater.
The heroes, there's something about it. They're always flawed. I'm reading a book now where the guy, like, whenever there's a man who's, like, has a good character, is really smart, very powerful, and, like, everything's kind of revolving around him, I can't help but being like, you are just kind of a douche. Like, you can't help but be a douche in that situation because everything's about you. And it's, for men, especially, like, white men, when everything's about them, it's not, you don't get a good person. Yeah.
No. I have been feeling frustrated with people trying to get clout.
Okay.
And no, but I was telling you so I listened to that Eric Thomas, I don't know, like, it was just on YouTube, and he was talking about having your anchors in order before you, like, reach stardom or whatever.
That makes sense.
And I think I even, like, I don't know, it just feels like, too, like, a lot of these child actors get all fucked up.
Yeah.
From kids, and they don't know how to have, like, real relationships, or they're on drugs or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not gonna quit comedy because I feel like I need it. It's kept me sober. I love comedy so much. And so in my heart, not to sound cocky, I'm just like, oh, I will make it one day. But because I love it so much, and it's just gonna happen.
And you're
like,
gonna stick with it.
Yeah, I'm sticking with it. I work hard.
Yeah.
And I know that before that happens, I'm trying to get things in order sort of quickly. Where I'm like, I need to have... Right now, I thought of it the other day. I was like, I'm assembling my army. Like, who do I want around me? Who do I want? Who I need, like, real loyal people. And it's like, oh, these are your anchors. Like, I think of my family as my anchor. I think of you guys as my anchors. Where it's like... But some people have the wrong anchors, and that's where they get into trouble, where they're like, my anchor's money. And he's like, no, you're going to get, like, so fucked up if that is your anchor. Or
attention, like... I feel the same. Like, I'm a little bit worried. I don't trust myself 100%. If I were to suddenly get famous for something tomorrow, and then I'm, like, talking to all these people who, like, are suddenly interested in me because I have something, whereas right now I don't have, like, shit to offer anyone. But once I maybe do, it's really hard to tell, like, who's being genuine. And people start, like, trying to bring you into their camp and, like, expose you to things like drugs. And I feel like I would be susceptible to that as well.
But that was sort of the example he gave as well, where he mentioned how, particularly in men, he was like, this will happen where they have a partner they grow up with, and then for some reason they get famous, or they get clout, and then all of these women come out, and then they just ditch this girl, the original, and then they're like with these girls that he never had a chance with, you know, and then then Eric was like, first of all, he's like, that's a lot of responsibility. If you're gonna be sleeping around, you have different families, that's a lot of responsibility. I don't want, you're just ruining people's lives, you're not thinking about it. He's like, but that weighs on you. And then he said too, like, let's say you get sick, you're dying. He was like, these women don't care about that. They're not gonna be there for you. They don't care about you like that. And it was like, that first person, that girl would have been there for you, but it's like, you sent her away. So I was thinking, like, how I get really upset when people chase clout like that, where I'm like, am I not good? And it's like, no, that's not that. I'm trying to, like, assemble my army now, because I'm like, these are the people I'm coming up with slowly the right way.
And it is hard, especially in comedy, not to compare yourself to people. It is hard because we're around people who are so focused on what clubs they're getting into, who's booking who, how much money they make, who's on tour, whatever. When you just like are around that, you absorb some of it, and then you start to like question whether you're doing enough or you're in a good enough place where you're at right now. But I don't know, we're still young. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a privilege because we can kind of be like relaxed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remind myself, I'm like, I haven't been doing this very long. I don't need to be somewhere. Like right now what I need to do is just practice.
Right.
And everyone's trying to be somewhere, and I'm like, if I got somewhere, I wouldn't know what to do.
That's what I mean too, is all the greats are like, it takes like 10 to 15 years to be great, and I feel that, and I can feel like after every year, I'm like, oh, I see the difference, I see the growth on the way to being a killer, but I know it's going to take all of those years. Yeah. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I think too, another thing to remember is like we have to anchor ourselves. So I remember telling you about my really toxic ex that, well, he had raped me, and then he also was like so manipulative and gaslighty, and I remembered I was starting to feel so crazy because he kind of got me to stop talking to my family. I was only talking to like 2 friends, and they were like, this is wrong. And then eventually, when I wanted to get out of the relationship, it was difficult because I felt like I didn't really have anyone. Mm-hmm. And I also had been starting to rely on him so much that it was just so hard to get out of it. I think what happened was I was like, am I crazy? Like, I was just starting to get very confused about things. And then one day I kind of snapped out of it, and I was like, I have to know who I am, and it doesn't matter what anyone else says. And I was like, this is what I know about myself. It's like, I'm a loyal friend, I'm strong, I've gotten sober, which is huge, and been sober for, at that point, it was like 4 years, which is big. But now it's like I tell myself things every day. Like, it's so important to have, I'm learning more and more as I do it too, the importance of that positive self-talk is like incredibly huge. I mean, and that's what we've talked about too, where we know people that you could tell them all day, like, oh, you're attractive, you're kind, you're good, you're nice, and then they're like, no, like they don't see it. So yeah. It doesn't mean anything. And you have to know yourself and be like, no, I am kind and good and talented or whatever, and you just have to like be truthful with yourself.
Yeah, you have to have something to return to when things get hard, so you're not consumed by it. Because like if I don't know why, but I think about this a lot. I'm like, what if everyone hated me all of a sudden? Like, what if like, because now, I mean, we've talked about this before. I used to be super ugly. When you're ugly, people don't like you, like, off the bat. Now that I'm freaking hot, now that I'm not as, like, awkward, or I've, like, kind of moved past that stage in my life, people do, like, treat me just generally better. And I enjoy it. Like, I enjoy going on dates with people who are, like, really attractive or being like treated with like human decency. It's nice. But I think like, what if I went back? What if people were like disgusted by me? What if like I get canceled someday and then people just hate me? People who don't know me. Like, what do I do?
I also have learned that doesn't last for like nothing is going to last forever. There's always going to be change, right? So, like, even I read Sarah Silverman's book, and she's one of my favorite comics, but she was talking about how she's gotten canceled, like, twice. One time because she, like, I think she said the N-word. But she said, like, she was just saying she's definitely, like, said, like, an Asian slur, but she's been canceled, like, off NBC. And I was like, and she's still killing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, that can happen, but at the end of the day, it truly is, like, how you think of yourself. It doesn't really matter what anyone else says.
And the people who are doing good, who you see people spin out and go crazy. But the people who don't, especially if they're, like, in it for so long and you see that they're not spinning out, those people have, a lot of the time, like, a family or people around them who they can rely on, who, like, keep them grounded.
Right.
That they won't, like Sarah Silverman, she has her family that she's very close with, and there's, like, nothing whatever can happen in her life, she still goes back to them, and then she doesn't change that much because she's still, that's where she's, like, rooted herself.
She's rooted herself with her family, and then I could tell reading her book, it's like she has these dear comic friends. I loved reading her book because that's what I feel like too when I see my friends that are comics. Like, I think all of them are so funny, but then they're genuinely good people. And I'm like, oh, it's gonna be so cool when we make it one day and, like, look back and be like, remember when we took mushrooms that time? Remember, like, doing dumb crap? But that was, like, in Sarah Silverman's book. She was, like, talking about taking acid in Washington Square Park and, like, what is it when you're, like, streaking somewhere? Like, she would, yeah, but it was just, like, dumb stuff with, like, Louis C.K. and, like, I was like, oh, that's so cool. But then I was like, those are both people that I respect, and they love comedy, and they love their friends, and they also have, like, families, and, yeah, they have anchors. That's the same with, like, I always have really liked Nate Bargatze and Jim Gaffigan and Chappelle. They all have families, like, they all have an anchor.
And also, like you said about the positive self-talk, it goes the other way too, I think. Like, when you're coming up, no one's really on your side. Especially with comedy, you suck, just objectively. And so people are kind of, like, real about it with you. They're like, you're not good, you know, like, you're not professional in terms of, like, your ability. Whatever, that's normal. But I just mean, like, there's something inside of us that keeps us going. We're like, I think I have talent. I like doing this. I'm gonna keep doing this. I can do this. That voice that you have is also, I think, the voice that keeps you grounded. Like, if you do make it, then everyone around you is going, you're amazing. You're amazing. And then it's so much positive reinforcement that you can let that become bad too, where you stop growing because you think, oh, I'm perfect almost. Like, you have to remember that you have flaws, and whatever other like, people say, you don't take it for, like, face value. You have people who you trust who will be real with you.
Yeah, I need that. That's what I need. I need people around me that are gonna, like, put me in place if I'm acting out, or be like, hey, that wasn't cool. Because my friends have done that and have been like, oh, that hurt my feelings, or you were out of line there, and it's like, okay, thanks for letting me know. Let me, like, correct. But I think that's a real friend, is someone that can say that to you. But what, I just had a thought, and then it's like, we were just talking about, my brain just, like, went, I don't know why. I think it's because I've had a long day and I ran a lot. And I didn't sleep that well.
Damn, girl.
The 4 Agreements I wanted to talk about.
What's that?
It's a book about kind of how to live your life, I guess. It's like, if you listen to these 4 agreements, like, you'll be happy.
What's the agreements? That you have to finish the book?
No. I just, like, my brain just literally just was like, we're done. No, we're not. Okay. The first agreement is, Carla, do you know the first agreement?
Be true to your word.
Be impeccable with your word, yeah. So that's, like, always be honest.
Honest? Okay.
The second one is always do your best. The third one is never take anything personally. And the fourth one is
Do your best.
no. But if you follow those four, your life will improve. And I've read it before and I followed them and it's true.
What's the last one?
I know.
I'm kidding.
Google. You have your
Google,
producer.
thank you.
It is. I think it is. It always do your best.
What's the third? I missed one.
Don't make us. No. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions and always do.
Don't make assumptions.
Don't make a sound. Don't, because it makes
An
ass out of you and
me.
just you.
Okay. No, that's all. Like, that's a great way to live your life. They're just basically like
Yeah.
yourself. And then they were saying to don't, like, whatever people do to you or say to you is a reflection of them.
Yes. And also, another way to look at that, I think, is like what your impression of somebody is sometimes just you. Like, I've learned, like, oh, she doesn't like me. Now, when I think that, when I make kind of like judgments about people, I realize, oh, that's like me. I didn't like her. So I projected that she didn't like me. Whereas, like, she probably just didn't really think about it.
Right.
I made it a thing. Like,
Right.
a lot of my judgments on people have just been me making a judgment in myself.
I used to be so scared of all men where I would be so aggressive to all of them. I think I still am, but I'm like standoffish. But when I first moved to New York, I was like, everybody sucks. I just kept saying it in my head, and then it wasn't like adding up when people would be like nice to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, still very suspicious. But that was like in my head that I was just so scared of everyone. And it wasn't like anybody else. People liked me.
Yeah. And insecurity plays a part too, where you're like, I mean, I'm like, oh, I'm not, like, whatever, I'm not, like, good enough or, like, fun enough. But I, especially, like, being trans, and when I talk to guys, I used to be like, oh, unless I'm, like, completely made up, and I've spent 3 hours on my hair and makeup, guys will think I'm disgusting. But now, like, I've just gotten lazy and I don't care as much, and I'll just like take a picture of me with no makeup and I look like a man. And then, or at least I think so, and then they're like, wow. So
You're looking
it's
more feminine, Jay.
Thank you. Comment below, I'll take any compliments. But no, I'm just like, wow, people don't judge me as harshly as I judge myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it honestly doesn't. It's not that deep.
That was what I feel like I've mentioned it before, but I remember it like stuck with me on the Rogan podcast when he was like, Michael Jordan isn't gonna comment like loser or like suck my balls like on your YouTube video. Like you have like these trolls that come out. Oh my god,
that'd be fun.
Oh my god, like they're not gonna. It's like people that, because I would put energy into that. Because I would have, like, these incel guys
like, fight
comment
them?
on my... Yeah, and then I remember I went on, and I was like, fuck you, I'll kill you and your family. And then my friends were like, okay, you can't do that, because then you're going to get, like, banned. But I was like, let's fucking go.
It's hard not to. Sometimes they say shit, and it pisses me off. But, yeah.
But if you put energy into it, then it's, like, sort of validating them. It's giving that energy. So I keep... Like I mentioned before, I'm so obsessed with protecting my energy this year and improving my boundaries where when I see a comment now, I just don't fuck with it.
Well, it's kind of like when someone in real life is a douche to me. And like, you have options. Like, you can fire back. You can try to, like, gain the upper hand in like the conversation or like get their respect or whatever, a lot of the time, I will say nothing. And that to me is like a pussy. But also, I like it because if someone is being like a douche to you and then you say nothing and you let it happen, you're not like teaching them otherwise. You're not teaching them to not be a douche. You're just letting them be a douche and then they're gonna keep doing it. I would rather not retaliate and risk being the person who like changed them. Like I want them to stay down.
I think though too, if I do retaliate, they're just gonna be like, oh, she is a bitch or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
You prove them right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's like, what's the point of that? And I'm not trying to. That's like when I get frustrated with like uber feminists that they want to change, like, but I'm like, you're like hurting, like the people that hear you already hear you, and the people that don't are just gonna be like, oh, look how crazy she is. It's like you're proving them correct in a way. We might have to wrap up.
Oh, okay.
Because I have to. We're at 31.
Okay, well,
it's
today's a truncated one. It's a little bit of a short teaser episode.
Yeah.
So, where can they find you, Espi?
At Espi Rivadera on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. ESPIRIVADENEIRAJ.
I'm on Instagram _JAYELLIOT.
Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you have questions, comments, concerns, you can hit us up. Bye.